trial. So we really appreciate those of you who are joining. We're really pleased tonight to have some great speakers join us. Dr. Keith Gottesdiener is the CEO of Rythym Pharmaceuticals, which is sponsoring this clinical study. He is a physician who worked for several years at Columbia University and joined Merck and worked in drug development at Merck for many years before joining Rythym, which is a smaller pharmaceutical company that's developing just a couple of drugs for GI indications. And he is joined by Michelle Hyland, also of Rythym, and they'll be telling you why the rationale behind why they think RM-493 might be particularly well suited for the PWS population and give you an overview of the clinical study. Dr. Jennifer Miller from University of Florida is one of the sites that will be is performing the study, and she is here to provide us with some of the more detailed information about what to expect if you were to enroll in this clinical trial. We should have plenty of time for question and answers at the end, and we really encourage you to, ask away. So in your chat box, on your screen, you should see a place for entering questions. Susan Hedstrom, the Executive Director, is going to be collecting all those questions, and she'll ask our panelists at the end of the discussion. So with that, I will introduce or turn it over to Keith and Michelle to tell us about RM-493.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So I also want to add my thanks to all of you who are listening and giving us a chance to tell you a little bit what we think is an exciting new possibility for Prader-Willi syndrome. So, of course, at this point in development, drugs are only numbered, not named. So I'm going to be talking about RM-493, which is an investigational new treatment for Prader-Willi syndrome. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to briefly introduce Rythym to you. We're a Boston-based biotech company. Our expertise is in drug development. Among the folks who are working here at Rythym, we've developed more than 15 novel drugs that we've brought through to patients that are currently in the market and are meeting unmet medical needs. We currently are working with two. One's a GI drug that hits the ghrelin receptor, and I won't talk about it today. But the other's RM-493, a melanocortin-4 or MC4 agonist. And there we're looking at different kinds of obesities, with our primary focus being on Prader-Willi syndrome. The next slide. So this is a little bit of a complicated slide, and I'm going to walk through it a bit slowly. It's probably the most complex slide I'll share with you. But it's really the rationale why a drug like RM-493 may be important in Prader-Willi syndrome, and we think may affect the root cause of Prader-Willi symptoms of obesity and hyperphagia. So over the last 2 years, there's been some very strong evidence that's come out that suggested a particular nerve pathway in the brain called the MC4 pathway might play a very important role in Prader-Willi. People have known about this pathway. It's in a part of the brain called a hypothalamus, and it's the final pathway that all of the brain signals about appetite and about weight loss really come together and are integrated. And so people have known that it played a very important role in appetite and the feelings of hunger, but no one was sure if it played a very important role specifically in Prader-Willi syndrome. And there's two new pieces of evidence that have really been developed over the last 2 years, and then one exciting piece of clinical evidence I'll show with you, which we think makes it very much worth looking at this pathway as a potential possibility. So first of all, I think all of you know, even more than I, that Prader-Willi is a loss of function on chromosome 15. There are many genes there and many gene-related products there. And people have been arguing really for decades as to which genes really affect which symptoms of Prader-Willi. One of those genes is called MAGEL2, where there's loss of function in the Prader-Willi syndrome. In 2013, people described patients who only were missing the MAGEL2 gene. So instead of losing the function of all of the genes that are commonly seen in the Prader-Willi syndrome, there were patients who were found only to miss the MAGEL2 gene. And when those patients were described, many of them had a Prader-Willi-like syndrome with obesity and profound hyperphagia. And of course, this supports a role that the MAGEL2 gene may have a key role in weight and appetite in Prader-Willi syndrome. At the same time, a bunch of basic scientists were investigating what the MAGEL2 gene does by using animal models that were missing or had knocked out the MAGEL2 gene. And what they found in those particular animals is that the animals missing the MAGEL2 gene had a defect or a problem in this MC4 pathway. If you look at the bottom, I've really just outlined what's called a cartoon or a diagram of that pathway, where on the left are where things come into that pathway, and on the right are the output. And you can see about halfway down that pathway, there's a big red X on a particular type of neuron called POMC neurons. And what these animal investigators had discovered is if you miss or you're lacking the MAGEL2 gene, it impacts upon the POMC neurons, and they don't work. What they also found is that if you come into this pathway halfway through, and you could see an example of RM-493 in green, RM-493 can come in below the block, replace the missing signals, and really drive things through the rest of the pathway, which is intact, and cause decreased appetite and weight. And so they tested in these animals MC4 agonists like RM-493, and they found the animals were very hyper-responsive to those agonists and greatly decreased their weight and their appetite. So our hypothesis is that if this data is true, and that MAGEL2 is an important element of the hunger and the hyperphagia of Prader-Willi syndrome, and if humans who have Prader-Willi disease are like the animals who are missing the MAGEL2 gene, that RM-493 should step in and really cure the defect that causes the hyperphagia and the obesity of Prader-Willi syndrome. Now, we'll only know if that's true when we complete the study. But what we do know is that if you take other patients who have defects in this pathway, or who have defects with the POMC neurons, these are not Prader-Willi patients. They have a completely unrelated defect that also hits the same neurons. And if you take those patients who are very, very heavy and have extreme hyperphagia, just like in the Prader-Willi patients, and if you give them RM-493, something dramatic happens. In the patients that we've treated, they've lost up to 26 kilograms, almost 60 pounds, over 13 weeks of the study that we did in that particular population. And probably more important is when they rated their hunger, they went from ratings of extreme hunger to ratings of absolutely no hunger at all. So we do know that if there is a block in that part of the MC4 receptor, and if you come in with RM-493 as replacement therapy, you can have dramatic results. And now in patients, we think it's a very good thing to test. Are Prader-Willi patients going to respond the same way? And the study is really designed to answer that question. If you turn to the next slide, no more science. Now just, sorry, it's always a long explanation, but we're quite excited about it. You could have gotten the 30-minute version, so I guess everybody online should consider themselves lucky. But in practice, the slide I'm showing now is the outline of the trial. It's the Prader-Willi study is ongoing. We're testing 2 doses of the drug and placebo. It's about a 10-week study. And in that study, everybody gets placebo at some times and active drug at some times during the course of the study. And we'll be looking at weight endpoints, appetite and hyperphagia endpoints, and endpoints of body composition, as well as other more minor endpoints as well. And in a few minutes, Michelle will tell us more about the study.
The youngest age is 16. The FDA does not allow us to go to younger patients at this point, but if we receive results that are promising, that's something that we would be able to entertain in the future. So we are restricted, and the lowest age we can go to for this study is 16. We are enrolling folks up to 65 years old, and they will have a confirmed diagnosis of Prader-Willi syndrome. They need to weigh at least 50 kilograms and have a BMI of 27 kilograms or more. Folks with diabetes are allowed on the trial, but HbA1c must be less than 7.5% and not managed with insulin. We are allowing patients who are taking GLP-1 analogs, but they need to be on stable doses for greater than 6 months for the 2 drugs listed there. Fasting plasma glucose must be less than 140. There needs to be stable body weight to really determine whether our drug is having an effect. The patients need to be on at least 2 months of a stable body weight, so no more than 5% weight loss or gain in the past 2 months. Blood pressure must be within normal ranges, 150 over 90, 90 over 150. There may be use of stable dose blood pressure medications, and they need to remain on stable doses, so it needs to be 30 days or more that they have been on that medication, and they need to stay on that medication throughout the course of the study. At this point in the program, we are excluding patients in group homes. We have received a lot of questions about that, and we understand that is an important question for you, an important question for the patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. At this point, we are not including group homes, but again, in future studies, we will revisit that. Next slide, please. There are 5 to 7 visits, and depending on the course of the trial, there may be a optional visit in the middle. And if you have a normally scheduled follow-up with a physician, that can be considered for the last visit. So that's where the 5 to 7 comes from. And there may be 7 brief phone calls, and these would be very brief, scheduled at the convenience with you and the study coordinator. And the duration of the program is the 14 weeks, as discussed by Dr. Gottesdiener. We understand that because we have few sites, that many patients will need to travel, so travel costs will be reimbursed for the patient, parent, or guardian. That also includes daily food allowance, hotel, mileage if you're driving, airplane flight if you're traveling. All of that is covered and organized through a travel agency that is very well versed with rare disease. Patients have daily injections on this program. If that's something that you and your family are not comfortable with, we have home health nurses who are available to come to your home at a time that is agreed to by you and the study coordinator for administration of those daily injections. Currently, we have 2 sites. Dr. Miller, who's on the phone with us tonight, she's at the University of Florida. And we have Dr. Stephen Couch and Elizabeth Roof at Vanderbilt University. We have 6 additional sites that are being considered, 1 in the Boston area, 1 in Long Island, 1 in Kansas, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Germany. We will, regardless of the number of sites that we add, all study enrollment will be completed for this trial by the end of 2015. Next slide, please.
So this is Keith Gottesdiener again. Just a few words on the safety of what we know in this trial. So as always, when you're starting a clinical program, we need to be a little bit more careful in terms of the patients we enter. And that's why Michelle went through a long list of requirements as patients enter the trial. We certainly intend, as time goes on, to really allow much broader numbers of patients in. But the reason for that is, at this point with the drug, we're still learning about what the safety profile of the drug is. I'm happy to say to date, it has been quite well tolerated, and the clinical profile is very favorable versus other anti-obesity drugs. But at the same time, we're learning. And so in a few moments, I'll walk through how we monitor or assure the safety of things, besides just the efforts of ourselves and the great investigators that we're working with, like Dr. Miller, and as well as what the FDA does to really keep an eye on these trials and to make sure that we're doing everything possible for patient safety. So far, more than 200 patients have been exposed to the drug in a variety of doses. There were very few patients who stopped because of side effects. There were very few what we call mechanism-based problems. Those are ones that the drug would be predicted to have based on where it works. And what they would be is potentially changes in heart rate or blood pressure, which we have not seen at all in any of our trials with very careful monitoring. An occasional increase in male erections or female arousal in our general obese population, and occasionally a little bit of nausea or vomiting. In addition, there are some injection site reactions, as commonly happens with injections. And one somewhat unusual side effect, which is our drug also tickles or activates the natural tanning receptor. So most people who get the drug, not all, but most, will begin to tan, just as if they, for example, went to Florida for a week or two, for those of us who are in the Northeast and are recovering from a horrible winter. If we could go to the next slide. I just wanted to walk through some of the oversight to reassure folks. The FDA oversees the safety of all clinical trials, including this trial we're in as well. And the safety profile of the drug and the potential risks are explained to all participants as part of the informed consent process. I've given you a high-level view, but Dr. Miller, for example, will walk you through everything you need to know. And we keep participants updated on any changes in the safety profile during the conduct of the trial. If the FDA, who's also kept up to date, has any concerns about the safety of the trial, they halt it until the investigation is complete, and then let the trial go forward only after everyone is satisfied the trial can continue. Next slide. All adverse events, which is really just what the regulators like the FDA call side effects in the clinical trial, are reported to the FDA by the investigator in Rythym, whether we think they are thought to be related to the drug or not. The FDA wants us to report everything. And some of the guidelines are extremely specific for how and when the adverse experiences are reported. For example, if Dr. Miller sees a serious adverse experience or side effect, she must report it to us within 24 hours. And we need to submit a safety report to the FDA within 7 days of notification, particularly if the adverse event is serious and unexpected. And the extra days are just for us to allow us to collect a little bit more information overall so we can help the FDA decide if there's any issues. So I think that's the end of our presentation. We hope we've shared a little bit about why we think this could be a great approach to Prader-Willi. We think there's a chance that we may be getting at the root cause of the increased appetite and food obsessions and obesity of Prader-Willi. And we have some very important scientific data that really support that idea. And we have some great data in a related problem that suggests there's even the potential for outstanding efficacy. Obviously, we hope that you'll consider participating in the trial, and we can really learn a lot more about what might help your children. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Miller, who will pick up the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Keith and Michelle. So I'm just going to talk to you briefly about some of the details of the study, what's expected of you if you participate. So Michelle already covered about the number of visits required. These visits include from your first screening visit through the post-study follow-up visit. We do require that everyone come back at the end of the study just for safety reasons to make sure there's no side effects. The treatment is approximately 56 days of treatment, as was covered by Keith and Michelle as well, and there's an open label extension at the end for 2 weeks after the placebo-controlled part of the study. Next slide. So at the screening visit, there are several things that have to be done. Michelle went through the exclusion criteria for the study, things about your BMI and blood pressure and things like that. And so we review the inclusion and exclusion criteria with the patient and their parent to make sure that people meet the criteria. If you do meet the criteria, then we go through your medicines that you're on to make sure that all the doses of any medicines that may affect the outcome of the study have been stable for up to 6 months. We look at fasting blood work, to look for diabetes as well as to make sure liver and kidney functions are stable. And then we do an EKG of the heart. This is something that the FDA requires for any obesity drug treatment. We do it in all of our studies, and it's just to make sure that the heart is working normally. We measure vital signs, of course, and do a physical examination. And then one of the unique things to this study is because this drug does cause tanning, as was mentioned, we do a dermatologic exam before entry into the study. And the reason for this is just to make sure there's no worrisome skin lesions that could potentially be a melanoma or anything like that. And so we just want the dermatologist to do a head-to-toe skin exam to make sure there's nothing to worry about with a drug that would cause tanning. And then we go through a series of questionnaires, as any of you who have participated in research studies are used to, asking about appetite and behavior and that kind of stuff at the screening visit. Next slide. So the expectations for this study are that you will come to each visit and that the kids will come fasting to each visit. It hasn't been as hard as I was a little bit worried it would be. Everybody, brings their breakfast with them. They get their blood drawn and get weighed and measured and everything, and then they eat their breakfast, so it's no biggie. But everybody does need to be fasting. At each visit, we do labs that are called safety labs, and this is just to make sure that there's nothing unexpected from the drug that we wouldn't have expected to see. So we look at liver and kidney functions and things like, and blood count and things like that. At each visit, the principal investigator at each site, so me at University of Florida, Dr. Couch at Vanderbilt, will look at the skin head to toe to make sure there's nothing to be concerned about. We look at the injection sites. This is a sub-Q injection, just like growth hormone, but we look at the sites to make sure that there's no lumps or bumps or rashes or anything to be concerned about. At each visit, there are questionnaires that the parents complete about their children, and there are questionnaires that the PI asks the kids themselves. During the study, the individuals that are participating get a DEXA scan looking at body composition 3 times during the study to look and see if there's any effects of the drug on fat mass and muscle mass, with the hope, of course, that the medication will help decrease the fat mass. Also, during the study, we measure the metabolic rate using what's called a metabolic cart. So you lay on a exam table for about 5 minutes with a clear plastic helmet over the head and just breathe normally, and it measures how much oxygen you breathe in and how much carbon dioxide you breathe out, and gives us a readout of how much calories each patient needs during the day. And so, of course, one of the things that we're hoping to see is that potentially this drug does improve the metabolism, and so we're looking to see if we can see any signals of that using the metabolic measurements. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, these are daily subcutaneous injections, just like growth hormone. The people who are already on the study, have had no problems with it. Most of our patients are used to getting growth hormone daily, and so they're not bothered by this. As Michelle mentioned, there is home nursing available. Most of our families are actually going ahead and using the home nursing care just because it's available, and so somebody comes in the morning and gives the injection. And then the nursing care company as well as myself or the PI at each site will look at the skin at each visit to make sure that there's no reactions, like I said, to the medication going in. Because it's a sub-Q injection, those of you whose kids have been on growth hormone know that sometimes you'll get a little drop of blood at the site, sometimes you'll get a little redness around the site, sometimes some itching. And so when that happens, you know, we have a protocol for what to do to try to help improve that if it does occur. But it's very common to have that with any injection type. Again, this is not unusual. Next slide. Safety monitoring, as I mentioned, we always do safety labs at each visit, the skin exams at each visit, and the injection site reactions at each visit. And then the other thing we do is we ask a lot of questions to the families, you know, to the patients and to their parents, asking about, you know, how you're feeling, any effects on appetite, any effects on behavior, any effects on, you know, your ability to enjoy your normal day-to-day life. You know, as most of you know, when you have this increased appetite, taking it away may be a little bit problematic for some individuals because they've been only thinking about food, and now what do they think about, you know, after they're not thinking about food anymore? So we want to make sure that this doesn't cause any problems for anybody. So we do a lot of questionnaires at each visit. Next slide. For efficacy monitoring, so to see if the drug is working, we look at both weight and waist circumference measurements to see if there's been a reduction in weight and a reduction in potentially what's called the visceral fat, which is the fat around the belly. We also look at the hyperphagia questionnaire developed by Elizabeth Dykins at Vanderbilt, and we're doing another appetite questionnaire as well that gets at questions that are a little bit more detailed in terms of your child's appetite, things like asking if you ask your child to share food with you, would they do it, or how often would they do it, things like that. So it's a little bit more detailed. I really actually like this questionnaire a lot for kids who are on a drug study that potentially is affecting appetite. And then, as I mentioned before, we do these behavioral and psychological questionnaires as well to see if the drug is working the way that we want it to and to make sure that there is no side effects. Next slide. And that's it. Any questions from anyone?
So Susan, I think you have access to the questions and I don't. So
I do. I have access to the question panel here. At this time, I don't see any questions that have come in. However, we are more than happy to take any questions that you may have. Those of you who are on the call are welcome to type in your questions through the GoToWebinar panel, or if you'd like to raise your hand, I'm happy to unmute you and you can ask your question personally to any of the panelists on the line. Okay, so I have one hand raised. This is Marianne Thorner. I'm going to go ahead and unmute her so she can ask her question. Hi, Marianne, you're on the line.
Yeah, I'm on the line. The question we had was related to the helmet and the metabolic, and about how long are we looking at for wearing that again and making sure that our son would be aware ahead of time that that was going to take place.
So Marianne, it's a large clear plastic helmet that goes over the head while you're laying down, and it takes in general about 5 minutes. We've done it on kids down to like infants and up to patients as old as, in their 50s or 60s, and it really doesn't bother anyone. The helmet is big enough. It's not like what you would think of as a typical helmet. It goes completely over the head and shoulders, so it's pretty large, and it doesn't make you feel restricted or uncomfortable in any way. If it does, then obviously we take it off and we talk you through it and put it back on again. But it's about 5 minutes in total to lay there with it on. And like I said, you just breathe normally. You can talk through it. You can hear through it. So with little kids, we often used to sing to them through it, to keep them calm. But in general, I will not do that to Noah. But it does not bother most people in general.
And how often is that?
It's done twice through the study.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jennifer, I have a question, or
Yeah.
Keith, either one, about the open label extension. So is that the higher dose, the lower dose? Does the patient get to choose that? Can you just talk about that for a second?
Keith, do you want to field that?
Sure, I'll take that one if you can. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes, the answer is that the foundation and Jennifer felt very strongly that everybody should have some time on drug, and we agreed. And so we put in the 2-week open label extension, so every parent, every child would get a chance to see what it was like to be on the drug. It is optional. If you don't want to be in that extension, no one has to. But we are hoping that many people who are going the study will want to be in it. The dose for that will actually be the higher of the 2 doses in the study. And a lot of that is based upon the fact that, that in this related genetic disease, the higher of the 2 doses in the study is the one that was most effective on hunger. And so we thought that if we were going to put people in an active extension, we should probably pick the dose that at least now we think is the most effective dose overall, right? Obviously, if that changes during the course of the study, we can always, do an amendment to the protocol and change it as well.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Virginia Kimonis is on the line. She is saying that some of her patients have requested a West Coast site. Would a West Coast site be considered?
So the answer is that a West Coast doctor has proposed participating in the study, but we haven't yet had a chance to talk to him or her. I'd rather not mention the name until we've at least contacted that doctor, but there is a possibility. That would be in California. The alternative, of course, which is not an easy one, is, as Michelle mentioned, we will pay the cost of transportation to where the sites are. For many folks, that's really just not an option. But for anybody who could consider the ability to do so, we'll do everything we can to make it easy for those patients to participate in either Vanderbilt or University of Florida or some of the other sites, Kansas, when we've gotten to that point as well.
Thank you. We don't have any other questions in the queue. We're happy, of course, to accept questions through the chat option, or if you want to raise your hand, you can answer, or you can ask your question directly.
I love this raise your hand option. It feels like you're in school.
We were just at the conference in Albany, and one of the questions I got at the booth, this is Michelle speaking from Rythym, one of the questions that I got at the booth quite regularly from quite a few families was whether or not the hyperphagia questionnaire was going to be used as an inclusion criteria. And I think you noted from the inclusion criteria slides that that is not the case, although I have seen the number of folks increasing as we've had the conversation. So for those of you who joined after the inclusion criteria slide, the hyperphagia questionnaire is being used in our program because it is the only questionnaire that is accepted by the FDA at this point. However, we are not using it as an inclusion criteria.
All right. It sounds like we have a relatively quiet audience out there. So I think we could go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Oh, we do have one coming through now. Could you give us any insight on how food preferences have changed during the study?
I cannot. We've not been doing the study long enough for me to be able to tell you that information specifically, but that's something interesting that we are keeping our eyes on to see if there's any difference in preferences for things like carbohydrates or fats or sweets or things like that. But right now, we just don't have enough patients enrolled in on drug to be able to give that answer yet.
Correct. And the only thing I can add to that is, and again, it may not apply to the Prader-Willi patients, but in the patients with the other genetic defect that also affects POMC, there wasn't much change in the patient's preferences, carbohydrates or sugars, etc. What there was is just a profound change in their overall feeling of hunger. Actually, what Jennifer said, when she was talking about the psychological profiles that we're doing in her questions, really was what we observed with this patient. She's 20, and she's had severe hyperphagia her whole life. She's a woman who weighs 155 kilograms when she started the study. And as I said, she lost about 26 kilograms. But after she was on the drug, her whole hunger drive disappeared. She would report each day that she actually had no hunger. Her family had to cajole her into eating breakfast, which is something they had never seen before. And when she started, she did actually complain of some psychological symptoms. She said she felt worried because her mind was so empty. And when she talked through with some of the psychologists who were supporting the study, what they discovered, and she discovered, was food had been such a major focus of her life. She just didn't know what to do when she actually had room and time for something else. I will tell you that after she spoke to the psychologist for a week or two, she started to discover the joy of that, and I would point out her parents discovered the joy of that as well. And now she's pleased as punch that that the drug exists, and she wants to be on it forever. I can't promise that that will ever happen in Prader-Willi patients. We just don't know. But it is one of the reasons why we're excited, because if something like that were to happen, I think it could be extraordinary.
Thank you. You mentioned that this individual didn't want to have breakfast anymore. Is it in that particular study, was there ever a concern that their lack of hunger would become a problem?
At the beginning, not much, but this is a patient who went through a study like this, and because of some of the dramatic effects, we got permission to keep treating this patient eventually. She came off the drug, and she immediately her hunger started returning, and she gained back 5 kilograms of weight over the first 2 weeks she was off the drug. And we talked it over with the investigators. These investigators are in Germany. They will participate in the trial there, but they're the equivalent of Dr. Miller. And they decided with us that we'd put her back on a slightly lower dose, because while it was very important to show what the drug could do, she was losing 2.5 kilograms a week without her usual familial supervision. And I think we all thought that that was probably a little bit too much. And so she's going back on a lower dose, and we'll increase it cautiously and probably try to get her, to a slightly smaller amount of weight. On the other hand, to get to her ideal body weight, if such a thing were possible, she still has 40 kilograms to go. It's just, I don't think we have to rush to get there as long as she's moving in the same direction for exactly the reason you raised.
Thank you. We do have a couple hands raised. The next was Carolyn Loker. Carolyn, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You're unmuted, Carolyn.
Thank you, Susan. I'm curious about the skin tanning. The longer you're on it, does it continually tan the skin and to be darker and darker?
No, not necessarily. Though again, we've still treated relatively small numbers, a couple of hundred patients. What it's really like is if you went to Florida, I talked about it being like a visit. And of course, just like tanning, when you're done with the drug, in this study at least, people over the course of a month lose that tan as well. But in practice, what happens is most people plateau over 2 to 4 weeks, just as if you had moved to Florida and you kind of reach a level and then you stay there. So they do look tanner overall. you know, it's a little bit different than tanning, though it is physiological tanning, because real tanning, you know, the sun typically damages your skin, dries it out, and causes all kinds of problems. And it's actually that skin damage that kicks in and causes the tanning to help prevent that or protect you from some damage. This is a more physiological tanning. It looks the same, but in practice, what it does is it just kind of tickles the natural tanning receptor in the skin and causes it in a way without any of the damage. And so in the end, we actually think that tanning may be protective for folks who are in the sun otherwise.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Dr. Kimonis. Dr. Kimonis, you're unmuted.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, Dr. Kimonis.
Okay,
How are you?
good, because I wasn't sure. So yeah, my question pertains to the cutoff, you know, starting at age 16. Were there concerns about starting off at, say, 8 or 10?
Yes. So we would like to start earlier, but actually the FDA is fairly stringent when you start these clinical trials at not wanting to start in younger children. Typically what they do is they'll let you go down to 16 or 18 as you gather some information. Then pretty quickly they'll let you go down to 12 because they feel like 12 is maybe getting close to a little adult, even though many 12-year-olds have not gone through puberty. But then they make you do quite a bit of safety work, both in animals and toxicology, as well as in humans, before they really want to let you treat earlier patients. And part of that reason is that they want to be sure that we're not testing drugs on young kids who often, you know, could be more damage from a drug if the drug is not safe, because they're growing and they're developing during the course of that time. So at this point, none of the regulatory agencies we're talking to would let us go down to below 16 or 18 years of age, 18 in Europe and 16 in the U.S.
I see. So it means you have to do the toxicology studies in mice or other animals, and before we
I think when we have data from this study, they'll let us go down to 12, even before we do those studies, that we're planning them. But I think we would have to have two things to go down below 12. One would be those toxicology studies, as you say, for example, in mice or rats. And the other is we need to bring to them the safety profile in patients, because we have many non-Prader-Willi patients we've treated. We know a lot about that. But the FDA, rightfully so, says Prader-Willi patients could be different. And so even if there's no reason to believe that, they want to actually see the drug safety profile in patients who are more adult before they let us go to children. So I do think we'll be able to go to lower age groups probably within the year, but I think it could be a little bit longer before they let us go below 12. On the other hand, there's no reason that we know of today that would be any reason not to expect that we'll get there as quickly as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Here's another question. This is from Jack Jones. Jack, you're unmuted.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Our daughter's only 4, so she doesn't qualify for the study, but are there plans to do studies on purely appetite and hyperphagia control and beyond the weight loss if everything goes well from here?
So the answer is yes. You know, we're faced with some difficult decisions as I try to answer that question, because there's really two things that drive these studies. One is, of course, is the unmet need. What do patients need that we can help to provide, or at least hope that we can help to provide? The other part is, in order to eventually make a potential drug more available, you need to meet all of the regulatory requirements for a drug to be registered and licensed in the U.S. Currently, the way the FDA is thinking about Prader-Willi, it isn't entirely clear whether they're focused more on weight loss or they're focused more on the appetite hyperphagia, or whether they want both. We've had some discussions about that, but we certainly plan to go back and have that discussion with them some more. But as you can imagine, as a small company who hopes someday to make this available, if it works the way we hope, to a broader population, probably the most important set of guidelines really is the FDA and what they want. Now, having said that, people at Rythym and many of the other companies that are working here, as well as, or really more led by, the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research and the other advocacy organizations, have a very important role in that question in two ways. One is the FDA, the best way for the FDA to really decide what's important in a Prader-Willi patient is for Prader-Willi patients and or their parents and caregivers to tell them. And I know the foundation has had many meetings, Jennifer and Susan could probably speak to this in a minute, where they've really talked to the FDA about what are the concerns and the issues that parents have and what a good therapy would look like. And there are many things that the FDA may ask us to do that are really just ways to quantify that, sort of like the foundation's survey that they did last year, which Teresa reported at the last meeting, where they really got a lot of information about what is it people need to see in order to help their children and, frankly, to help the families of the children who are taking care of things. And so I think there's a lot of advocacy work that will help with that as well. But at the moment, I think the FDA is focused on both. And so that's where we're putting our focus at the moment.
And I'll just add, this is Teresa, that we view this as an ongoing process and engagement with the FDA. We've had discussions with them. The Prader-Willi Syndrome Association we've all gone together to the FDA. Many of you participated in the Patient Voices survey, and we've pulled that information together. We intend also to do a risk-benefit analysis of the population to be able to show the FDA what kind of tolerance our population would have as far as risk of side effects with the drug. Would you tolerate a drug that made your child nauseous if they were never hungry? Those kinds of questions, just to convey that information to the FDA. And I will say that they have been really interested in understanding this disorder and, understanding what is important to our families. I think we of course have more education to do, but they really are, the FDA has been mandated by Congress to take the patient's view into account, and I think they take that mandate quite seriously. So I think it's encouraging, and I think we'll continue to work on that.
All right, so I suppose this will be last call for questions. I don't see anybody else in the queue waiting to share their question with us. This webinar has been recorded and it will be made available for you to come back and listen to, as well as shared with the rest of the PWS community who is not able to join us tonight. So if you do have questions, you'll have this as a resource to be able to go to. We do have another question that just came in. Will inclusion criteria be expanded to include 14-year-olds who have well-controlled weight?
Yes. So the answer is, in the very short term, in the next 6 months, the answer would be no. The FDA really won't let us, probably until we complete this trial, go down below 16 years. So we will be asking them, and if they surprise us, we certainly would be delighted, but at the moment I think it's very unlikely till we get some of the preliminary data from this trial. We certainly do hope to go at some point to patients with well-controlled weight. it always seemed very strange to me as a clinician that the way the FDA currently is thinking about this, people have to be less well controlled to be in these studies. But of course, part of that is the issue of, is weight or, a drop in weight an important endpoint? As long as the FDA continues to think about that, we probably can't take in the near term the absolute most best controlled patients into the trial, because we could never show weight loss in those patients overall. Now, if we get to the point where the FDA begins to understand better that improvements in hyperphagia by itself are a tremendous benefit, I think we would love to be in that situation. So I can't give you any immediate hope, but I do think that as we do more of this work, there's every reason to believe that that will change over time. And I think that's a place where Teresa and Susan and the others in the foundation probably are going to play as much a role in that as anybody from Rythym.
Well, thank you, Keith. Oh, here's another hand. Let's go ahead and Carolyn, I'm going to unmute you. Carolyn, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks. With people with Prader-Willi syndrome, they have a lot of GI dysmotility, a lot of GI problems, and one of the caution signs is if they are not vomiting. So there's a real concern, while testing a drug like that with the GI issues. Dr. Miller, I wonder if you have anything to say about that, if you've seen
actually,
that it's
I would
causing
say,
any type of gastroparesis.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's going to do the opposite. I actually think this is has the potential to increase gastric motility. The endpoint of the system that Keith talked about is actually oxytocin, and oxytocin has receptors in the gut which can improve gut motility. So my suspicion of this drug actually, and one of the reasons I was so excited about this drug, is I think it's got the potential to actually not only help the appetite, but also potentially even some of the GI issues. Did I say that fair, Keith? Is that a fair statement?
I think so, and I think one other thing that we can add is, because our company Rythym knows quite a bit about gastroparesis, our other medication is being studied in gastroparesis, not this one, but the other one. So we're very familiar with the populations and the symptoms. I don't think from everything we know, the nausea and the vomiting that we've seen here, which by the way is very infrequent, very mild, and usually really at the beginning of treatment. So it's seen in very small numbers of patients. But even when it's seen, to the best of our knowledge, it's not caused by gastroparesis. We're not quite sure what causes it, but we don't necessarily think that there's any evidence that in the GI system there's any problems, and most people think it's something central, sort of what might happen. It isn't a cancer chemotherapy, but cancer chemotherapies don't impact your gut. They do something or tickle something in the brain that causes a little bit of that feeling, and if we had to guess today or looking at the data, we'd say somehow it may twitch something in the brain that says, you're going to have a little bit of nausea, but no evidence that there's any actual physiological impairment of the GI tract. And I would agree with Jennifer. If I had to guess, I'd say overall most people's GI tract should work better. But I want to be clear, that isn't a fact what I'm describing. It's just our best guess.
It's just our supposition.
That's correct. I don't want to ever overpromise what we're going to deliver here.
Now, this question may be somewhat humorous, but there's a question on whether Rythym is a publicly held company and if investments could be made.
So we are not currently a publicly held company, and at the moment, no investments can be made. I'm going to give a humorous answer. If there is somebody on the line who wanted to invest at the level of a venture capitalist and happened to have $20 million lying around, we'd gladly have a conversation. But in
I'd talk to him too. I'm just saying.
Yes, and that's true too. We'll all have to get in line for that. There is a chance that Rythym may become a public company over the next year. Some of the other areas we're working in obesity have shown some really remarkable results, and many of you, may know Zapgen, which is a company which is also working in Prader-Willi, and we know those folks well, and they have made the transition into a public company. So maybe a year from now, I would tell you it is possible. But for today, what I would say is, think hard about whether or not this is the right trial for your family and your child. I think there's a lot of good science around it, but it isn't for everybody. All we can promise you is there's some very good reasons to think about enrolling your patient. We will promise you that, I think this is more Dr. Miller than myself, we'll promise you we will do everything possible to do the trial in a very safe way. And I think what we can also promise you, which is not inconsiderable, is we will make a really important step forward in understanding what could work in Prader-Willi. And obviously that can't be anybody on this call's first reason for participating, but I think it is a very important one as well.
Well, I would personally
I ended a little less humorous than the question started.
And I'll just reiterate that I think this study is important for a number of reasons. I think we all hope for a drug that can control appetite and weight in PWS, and this has potential, and we need to see if it will or not. And the sooner we can determine that, the better. I think either way, it's going to give us some information about PWS and what the issue is. And while a negative outcome would not obviously be the best outcome, we would learn something, and that's important too. So again, I would just endorse what Keith says. Please, to all our families, really consider this seriously, and it is a time commitment. It is an investment of effort and emotion and all of that. But if we're ever going to move forward to a place where we have a drug that is effective in PWS, we're going to have to do that. And our little tagline recently for FPWR is "It starts with us," and that's the truth. Nobody else is going to do this. So if the people on the line and the people in our community are the ones who are going to get this done. So let's do it.
Absolutely. So for those of for the individuals in our community who are interested in more information and potentially participating in the study, what is their next step?
The next step would be they can reach out to you if they have your information, so they can reach out to the foundation, or they can reach out to me, Michelle Hyland at Rythym, and my email is MHYLAN as in Nancy @rhythmtx.com. If that's difficult, because that's not printed and that's just verbal, you can also just reach out to the foundation and they can get in touch with me.
Or they can reach out to me or my study coordinator directly as well.
Right.
Or to Elizabeth Roof, who's the study coordinator for Dr. Couch at Vanderbilt.
And the foundation will continue as sites are added. We'll send out, if you have signed up for a clinical trials alert, we'll send out that information so that you can be kept abreast of where sites are opening. If they open internationally, we'll make that, we'll blast that out to people as well. So.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their time tonight. Personally, I thought that this was an incredible webinar, very, very informative. Thank you for making the information so tangible to those of us who do not have an MD or PhD degree. Again, for all of you who are interested in getting more information, you're welcome to reach out to any of us who were on this call tonight. We would be happy to provide you with any information and connect you with the appropriate people.